Hi companions, on 11th April 1970, a rocket sent off for the Apollo 13 mission from Kennedy Space Center in America. 3 space travelers were on it, going to the moon. However, the intriguing thing was that not so much as a year had passed since the day when Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon. Interestingly, this was the point where the third mission for NASA to send people on the moon. Seeing the outcome of the last 2 missions, the space travelers in this rocket were exceptionally sure about their main goal and their fantasy. Their fantasy was to go to the moon, yet around then they were ignorant that their fantasy could never work out as expected. In April 1970, when their shuttle was around 330,000 kilometers away from the Earth, they heard a boisterous bang out of nowhere, a colossal bang that shook the whole shuttle. Inside a couple of moments, the advanced notice lights and cautious began going on. It was found that one of the oxygen tanks had exploded. What's more, the other oxygen tank was spilling quickly. The mission control on the ground could barely handle it. They accepted that the instruments were breaking down. Then again, they see that as a result of the impact, the space apparatus had moved from its way such a lot of that it was going kilometers away from the Earth consistently. Inside a couple of hours, the space explorers in Apollo 13 were so distant from the Earth that it turned into another record. Until this point, no human has gone such a long ways from the Earth as the 3 space explorers did during the Apollo 13 mission. Disregard arriving on the moon, the inquiry in those days was whether they could get back to Earth alive. This is a troubling story of Apollo 13. So let's explore. In 1961, American President John F. Kennedy guaranteed the world that before the decade's end, he would have people on the moon. This commitment ought to be found with regards to the virus war. Around then, America and the Soviet Association were taking part in a race, a space race. Who will be the forerunner in the area of innovation? In 1969, both Apollo 11 and Apollo 12 missions were effective. Space travelers didn't just step on the moon, yet additionally securely got back to Earth. Kennedy's commitment was satisfied, yet it made a side difference. Just after it, individuals and governments' revenue in burning through cash on space diminished. Definitely. Clearly, individuals were eager to see a man step on the moon. Interestingly, however, individuals can't be so energized for the second, third, and fourth time. Hence, the American government cut NASA's financial plan. Furthermore, numerous future missions that were anticipated the new couple of years, similarly to Apollo 20, were dropped. That is the reason the Apollo 13 mission came at a pivotal time throughout the entire existence of room travel. NASA needed to demonstrate to the American government that it was as yet worth burning through cash on space. That is the reason the essential mission objective of Apollo 13 was not exclusively to access and overview the moon's dirt, yet to likewise foster the human ability to work in the moon's current circumstance. The plan of Apollo 13's shuttle was like that of the past space missions. Principally, there were 4 fundamental parts: order module, administration module, lunar module, and send-off getaway from fair work. The space apparatus was sent off on a Saturn V rocket. Every one of the 3 space travelers were situated in the order module, which was the principal part of the rocket. Yet, it was the little part. The order module is only this cone shape, which is just 11 feet in length and 13 feet in breadth. All the instruments, boards, root gears, radios, live emotionally supportive network, and little motors were all in the other module. The second most significant part was the help module, which had a large portion of the oxygen for the space travelers. It had a few additional motors as well as power modules to produce power. The order and administration module is much of a time altogether called the Order and Administration Module, or CSM in short structure. They are associated during the whole mission until the space travelers return to Earth. So what's more, just during the reemergence of Earth, are they isolated from one another? The third part was the lunar module, which was really expected to arrive on the moon. Also, when the work on moon was finished, it should get joined to the CSM module by and by. The fourth part, the send-off getaway framework, was not so significant for the mission. It was just an assignment was to shield the space explorers from a mishap during the send-off. It works like this: like assuming there's a mishap during the rocket send-off, and the rocket bursts into flames. It securely launches the space explorers and removes them from the mishap. You can find in this video where this cut short framework was being tried. On the off chance that everything works out positively in the send-off, the LES isn't required and it is shot out and discarded. On 11th April 1970, since Apollo 13 sent off securely and effectively, the LES was not required. 3 space travelers were on the space apparatus: Commandant Jim Lovell, the pilot of the lunar module, Fred Heise, and the third pilot of the outer module, Jack Swigert. Incidentally, as indicated by the first arrangement, none of these 3 were picked for this mission. Initially, 3 distinct space explorers were picked for this mission. In this case, they all had various issues in light of which they couldn't partake in this mission. Consequently, the team of these 3 space travelers takes off from the Earth. To see this rocket send off, there were around 200,000 observers on the ground. This was a modest number contrasted with the Apollo 11 takeoff the earlier year that had 7 million onlookers for the rocket's send-off. NASA again acknowledged how rapidly individuals lost their advantage in space investigation. However, on and off chance that we discuss the mission, the shuttle took away flawlessly towards its objective. It requires 3 days for them to arrive at the Fra Mauro cavity of the moon. This is the major opening of the moon's surface, a pit which is accepted to contain a ton of data about the moon as well as about the Earth. The most concerning issue during the initial 2 days of the flight was when space traveler Jack Swigert understood that he had neglected to record his personal assessment form. He asked the mission control on Earth whether he could get an expansion. He got a genital answer that they could get a 60-day expansion. This discussion demonstrates that everything was going right during the initial 2 days. Everything looked great in the mission. At 46 hours 43 minutes of the mission, the case communicator on the job around then said that the space apparatus was looking good and that they weren't staying there out. The 3rd day of the mission, 13th April, the group is informed that they had to do a few tests on the lunar module. Furthermore, aside from this, they need to do a transmission for the TV, where they will utilize the cameras to show the insides of the order module and administration module to the world. Presently, the crowd's advantage in this was low to the point that no TV station showed this transmission around then. Administrator Lovell's better half went to the celebratory segment of the mission control to watch this transmission. Around 6.5 minutes after the finish of the transmission, the flight regulators on the ground requested that Space Explorer's frigate check the oxygen levels. There was the same odd things in this. It was only a standard check of the oxygen tank in the help module. And keeping in mind that this check was being finished, unexpectedly an enormous blast happened. Many admonition lights and alerts went off. As I told you toward the start of the video, the space explorers in the shuttle were generally in shock. Commandant Lovell reached mission control and said, "Houston, we haven't had an issue." It worked out that one tank of oxygen was totally unfilled and the other tank was going down quickly. Mission control on the ground initially felt that the instruments should show some unacceptable information, yet that was reality. Everybody expected to make a move critically if they had any desire to save the existence of the space travelers. The television stations that had scored this mission exhausting and were not showing it on the news made this the news features abruptly. The oxygen tanks in the shuttle were circled. In these, oxygen was put away in fluid structure. There was a radiator at the middle which changed over the fluid oxygen into gas. At Apollo 13, there were 2 such tanks in the help module. The tank number 2 was initially introduced in Apollo 10, however was taken out from that point for change. Furthermore, a minor mishap occurred with it. It accidentally tumbled down during fix and was harmed. The cylinder inside it was harmed, yet nobody saw during the investigation. While testing it, individuals saw that the tank wouldn't be totally vacant. To dispose the leftover oxygen, the warmers were utilized to totally bubble it. Afterward, it was found that the thermometer inside it could show a most extreme temperature of 30 degrees Celsius. Yet, when the warmer was utilized to warm the oxygen in the tank, the temperature would reach as high as 538 degrees Celsius. Nobody saw this outrageous warning since it didn't enroll in the thermometer. Because of this outrageous warning, the protection of the electrical wires in the tank were harmed. Before the mission, NASA's supervisor and specialists had endorsed the tank after an intensive examination, yet they couldn't see the inside harm. Furthermore, along these lines, during the Apollo 13 mission, during the normal check of the tank on the third day, because of those electrical wires, there was a flash and the tank detonates. It was simply by chance that the tank was joined to the outside of the shuttle. Had it been joined inside the space apparatus and detonated there, then every one of the space explorers would have been killed in a flash. But it was outwardly. The blast happened outside. What's more, just the 13-foot board was harmed in the help module. What else was harmed in the rocket? The space explorers were not entirely certain. Presently, everybody needed to settle on a significant choice. What direction might they, at any point, they get back to Earth? The quickest method for getting back to Earth was to turn the space apparatus. Be that as it may, to do this, the primary motor of the help module must be begun. The principal motor was situated close to the impact in the CSM module. Nobody knew, regardless of whether the motor was harmed. The second method was for getting back to Earth was to go towards the moon and circle around the moon to get back to the Earth. For this, the driving force of the assistance module wouldn't be needed. In any case, the gamble was that it would require 4 to 5 days to get back to Earth. When did the space explorers have sufficient oxygen and water left? NASA flight chief picked the subsequent choice. To take the long way back, the space travelers were told to quickly close the CSM module, and keeping in mind that returning, they were told to involve the lunar module as a raft. However, this choice was a protected choice. It had a few issues. The lunar module was planned so that 2 main space travelers could sit in and around for 20 years. Since I told you, its unique design was to arrive on the moon and get joined to the CSM module once more. However, presently, it was normal that these 3 individuals would sit in the lunar module for 4 to 5 days. The motor of the lunar module were not planned such that they could be terminated more than once. Generally, this was likewise a hazardous move to save supplies and energy. The space travelers were told to close down all unnecessary frameworks in the shuttle, including the radiators that were introduced. Saving electricity was vital. So according to this arrangement, the space explorers sat in the lunar module, and interestingly, the motors of the lunar module were terminated. At this point, when a motor is turned over, it is known as a consume. Thus, they do the primary consume to get on the new way. With the assistance of his consume, they arrived at the opposite side of the moon. The most distant side of the moon, they turned into the primary people of the planet to go such a long ways from the Earth. Also, this record stays fantastic even at this point. At their uttermost point, they were 400,000 kilometers away from the Earth. In the event that they remained on this way, they could arrive at the Earth around 153 hours after send-off. Be that as it may, this time Edge was exceptionally unsafe. On the off chance that they arrived at Earth after so lengthy, just 1 hour of surplus food, water and oxygen would stay for the space explorers. NASA, group of the underground, accepted that this edge is exceptionally restricted. That is the reason the space travelers were told to consume the lunar module motor for the subsequent time. The architects in the mission control had done numerous computations to see if the lunar module motor will actually want to deal with the subsequent consume or not. These computations demonstrated right when the subsequent consume is finished, the flight season of 153 hours was decreased to 143 hours. An 11-hour long edge of endurance before the space explorers could unwind. Another issue emerged: the high centralization of carbon dioxide. In spaceship, aside from oxygen tanks, there are canisters of lithium hydroxide to eliminate carbon dioxide. At this point, when space travelers take in oxygen, they exhale out carbon dioxide. In the event that the carbon dioxide isn't taken out, it will bring about a lot of carbon dioxide, which can be tricky. For that reason, canisters of lithium hydroxide are utilized so carbon dioxide responds with it and becomes lithium carbonate. In any case, the issue here was that the canisters of lithium hydroxide in the lunar module were enough for simply 2 individuals to get by for 2 days. In any case, there were 3 individuals who needed to get by for 4 days. In this case, here there were 3 more individuals who needed to get by for almost 4 days. The beneficial thing here was that there was a few canisters in the outer module as well. In any case, their channel was squares and the ones in the lunar module had a roundabout shape. The specialists on the ground had 24 hours to tackle this issue. Like space travelers from the rocket, conveyed to educate them concerning everything present around them. Plastic sacks, cardboards, some soot hoses, some conduit tape. They needed to make something that could be the answer of this issue. Following a couple of long periods of testing, they make a contraption to make this work, subsequent to giving bit-by-bit guidelines. Another gadget was made with the thing present there, with which the degree of carbon dioxide diminishes once more. Authority Lowell, in his book Lost Moon, expresses the contraption wasn't exceptionally attractive, yet it worked. In the whole salvage mission, even the littlest subtleties were dealt with. Space travelers were told not to drink in excess of 200 milliliters of water per day, since supposing that they were hydrated, they should urinate. Also, along these lines, the amount of the urine could redirect the spaceship. That is the reason they expected to make due to drinking so little water. The three explorers lost 14 kgs of weight altogether. Space Explorer Hayes gets a urinary partial contamination. Again, following 4 days, when Apollo's 13 shuttle arrives at Earth, space travelers understand that they need to consume. In their estimations, they hadn't considered the cooling fume present in the rocket. This made the space apparatus stray from the track. Leader Lowell completed one more consume of the lunar module, which welcomes the rocket in the grove again. Fortunately, the rocket could endure the third consume as well, despite the fact that this lunar module was intended to endure just a single consume. The entire world was holding their breaths and watching the news channels. What's more, we're trusting that the space travelers will get back to Earth. The relatives and companions of the space explorers were watching this work out of television together. Presently, the greatest inquiry was the point at which this wrecked space apparatus enters the world's climate. Will the shuttle be going to support the intensity influence? Can the space travelers got by? For this part, the space travelers needed to get back to the order module in light of the fact that the main of the order module was made for reemergence on the Earth. When the order module entered the world's climate, there was a correspondence power outage. This was typical in light of the fact that because of ionization of the air, the radio waves get embedded and the correspondence isn't possible between the NASA representatives present on the ground and the space travelers in the rocket. Generally, this correspondence power outage is for like 2 to 3 minutes, but it was normal that the correspondence power outage that would be here for a limit of 3 minutes. 3 minutes were finished, yet there was no response from the opposite side. 10 seconds pause, 30 seconds pause, 60 seconds pause. Indeed, even following 4 minutes, there was no correspondence from the rocket. Might the space travelers at some point get by or not? 4 minutes and after 27 seconds, at last, correspondence was gotten from the opposite side. The people watching it on TV could last inhale once more. Every one of the 3 space travelers made due. The parachute was conveyed in the order module and it gradually fell into the Pacific Sea. The 3 space explorers get back free from any potential harm. Albeit this mission fizzled, none of the 3 space explorers set foot on the moon. Yet, this Apollo 13 mission influenced the pages of history, showing this verifiable salvage mission of the Apollo 13 and the fortitude of the space explorers. A few books are composed on it and movies are made. After the examination of this episode, numerous security measures are embraced by NASA, so there could be no such mishaps in ongoing missions. After Apollo 13, Apollo 14, Apollo 15, 16 and 17, this large number of missions were fruitful. On 7th December 1972, Apollo 17 was the last mission by NASA under the Apollo program. Right, thank you so much for watching our video. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and hit the bell icon.